A good novelist does not lead his characters, he follows them. A good novelist does not create events, he watches them happen and then writes down what he sees. Earlier this week, I finished Finders Keepers, the second book in the Bill Hodges trilogy by Stephen King, and I'm happy to report that he wrote another banger. I really liked Mr. Mercedes. I thought it was a solid crime thriller, but this one was much better, in my opinion. I enjoyed it way more than the previous in pretty much every single aspect. First of all, I thought the plot was just way more my speed. Mr. Mercedes is a very good plot, and for some people it will definitely work more because it's more about the crime and the thriller aspects and trying to hunt down the person who's, murdered all these people, whereas this one is more focused on the individuals, the two individuals that this story flips back and forth between. The victim and the perpetrator of the crime. And there's a lot of kind of like meta commentary about the nature of novels, especially great American writers and their novels, and who owns them and who connects them and what they actually mean to the average reader, to the kind of identity of the American culture and all those kinds of things. And for me, like, as someone who is attempting to be kind of a reader who's got a variety that he pulls from, I don't know, this really spoke to me because I just like it made me more interested in the wider kind of literature landscape that there is. It's really interesting because this book is basically analyzing American classics to some extent and how they affect people, how they speak to them, and how do we intellectually engage with the stuff that we consume, and do we take away the correct message from the books that we read, or are our personal interpretations incorrect, and who is this art actually made for, and who actually owns this art. So for me, I really like that. Stephen King is making, like, first of all, he wrote a very good crime thriller, but on top of that, he wrote a book about kind of the narrative of what it's like to be a very famous author and have very beloved works by millions and millions of people, and how that affects you as a person, and what having fans like that is, especially fans who maybe don't entirely understand what you're going for in your stories. Sometimes, despite being a constant reader, we misunderstand what our favorite authors are actually attempting to say. We take away the wrong things, or we set ourselves up for failure because we expect one thing and then another happens because that's actually what works thematically. So for me, I thought that part of the narrative was really fun. As for the actual crime and thriller part, awesome. I really, really liked the tension in this one. I thought that while it doesn't quite reach the high octane tension of Mr. Mercedes, which, the threat in that one is very severe and it affects thousands of people, this one's more low-key. It only threatens realistically a family and, 2 or 3 other people, but that entire time there was that kind of live wire feeling that I had while reading this, where every time I finished a chapter I was like, but I want to read one more. I want to read one more. And that's something Stephen King just continues to do across all the books that I've read by him. Even my least favorite Stephen King book always makes me want to read one more chapter. I have yet to come across a book by him where I'm like, I don't want to read another chapter and stay up until 2 a.m. I don't want to do that. This is an author, for me, who he continues to deliver stories where I am completely engaged the entire time. I may not always like them as much as I want to, but I'm always engaged with what he's writing. And here, Finders Keepers is no different. I felt like the characterization was much stronger. I felt way more connected to the characters in this one. And I'm starting to really, really like them. They're starting to really hit home for me. The plot was amazing. I really like the first section and how it switches back and forth between 2 different time periods. I really like the 2 kind of main characters and the focus that this story takes on. I really like kind of the thematic stuff that Stephen King does here, and everything I mentioned about like what does it mean to be an author and what does it mean to be a fan of authors and all that kind of stuff. I really connected with that. I really just enjoyed this one. I thought that pretty much everything about this was better. I felt like the pacing was stronger here. I felt like, despite the tension not being quite as high, I felt like there was a good amount of tension throughout this. The character work was better. The plot was more engaging for me personally, and I really like the way that this kind of concluded. The only complaint I have is that Stephen King sets up a certain event to happen, and you definitely think it happens, and then like the next chapter, you're like, oh, that didn't really happen the way I thought it did. And I kind of wish that he had actually pulled the trigger on it and had just gone there and gotten that level of dark. But besides that, I have no issues with this one. This is just a really, really fun crime thriller. Just an excellent sequel to Mr. Mercedes. So if you like Mr. Mercedes, I highly recommend checking this one out. And if you, for some reason, you haven't checked out his Bill Hodges trilogy, you should. It's really, really good stuff. I am not an expert in crime thrillers by any stretch of the imagination, but these are really, really fun, fairly short stories. I think this is like 500 pages, and it flew by. Like, it does not read like a 500-page book. It reads like, like 300, and it reads super quickly. So, highly recommend Finders Keepers. I'm going to give it an 8.8 out of 10. It was awesome.